Well, let me ask a question on the subject of the opportunity to shift the paradigm which has dominated, as you've referenced, world policymaking and held the progress of humanity back. In the wake of the strategic and diplomatic victory that President Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov won in the case of Syria, with the successful outflanking of Obama to defuse the bomb, which would have detonated World War III had the operation in Syria gone forward. There are now similar efforts to achieve a similar result concerning the threat of war with Iran. Hassan Rouhani, the newly elected president of Iran, has been making very public efforts at initiating a policy of what he calls constructive engagement. On the eve of his trip to New York City for the upcoming General Assembly meeting of the United Nations, Rouhani has made several direct appearances in the United States press, on NBC television, and just yesterday in an op-ed that he published in the Washington Post, which have allowed him to speak directly to the American people, much in the same way that President Putin did in his op-ed of the New York Times from last week. And what President Rouhani asserts in this op-ed is that we have the urgent necessity of overcoming the ingrained Cold War mentality of zero-sum game, geopolitical unilateralism, and imperialism in the favor of constructive engagement, as he calls it, between great powers in the spirit of mutual benefit and security. And he emphasizes that the key to this kind of dialogue is the recognition and the respect for different, distinct cultures and national identities of sovereign states. And the only way to establish this new paradigm in international relations is to cease focusing on the negatives and to begin focusing on a positive vision for the future of all of humanity. So his appeal to world leaders is to have the courage to look beyond rivalries of the present and to embrace a vision of the future that they wish to create for their children and their grandchildren. So I think it's significant that these initiatives from Rouhani and from Vladimir Putin both come in the wake of the recent meetings of the SCO in China, where Rouhani and Putin and President Xi Jinping were in dialogue about precisely this vision of the future, what Xi Jinping defined as the new Silk Road or the Eurasian land bridge. And this is something which you've emphasized for years would be based on the principle of the Treaty of Westphalia, the benefit of the other, or in other words, the common interest of mankind. And this is something which has also been the basis of the proposals for the SDE, the Strategic Defense of Earth. So my question is, with this clear opportunity for a paradigm shift in our hand, how can we secure the necessary political victories in order to make this possible?
Well, the problem is that the optimistic view, which is implied by Iran, implied by China, implied by Russia, is in a sense an accident, and it will not solve the problem. Because remember that we've come to the point where weapons which decide wars are thermonuclear weapons. Now, the very fear of the thermonuclear factor terrifies people. What's worse than that? We've reached the point that war, as we have known it, among human beings is no longer possible if human beings wish to survive. Because when you come to the point that the existence of society depends upon thermonuclear fusion, you no longer have the option of simply negotiating peace. Now, what you will preserve, because culture is so important, that the cultures of various nations and peoples are things which will continue to be, maybe decreasingly in the long term, but for the immediate period, for the next couple of centuries, the planet is going to be based on national cultures in one way or the other. And therefore, the national cultures naturally tends to lead, if you're rational, to peace, not to war. So this is not the idea that this is an opportunity to avoid collision. It doesn't work. Because the problem is, if you don't develop thermonuclear fusion now, you're not going to be able to maintain an assured defense of the existence of the human species. Therefore, while the peace orientation, as I've just described it, summed it up, yes, that is necessary. But what's the positive basis for it? The fact that you refrain from doing something bad does not mean that you're going to do something good. So you have to have a driver of self-interest which goes beyond these kinds of considerations. And what we need to do is drive now and stop this nonsense and get a thermonuclear fusion driver. We have on our hands, if we can cut the suppression of thermonuclear fusion, what we have is a system now where they're playing games with thermonuclear fusion. They're not allowing it to work. They're not giving it the opportunity to be applied in the level of intensity which we can fairly estimate is required to do the job. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the Pacific Ocean and both sides of it, from the Mississippi across the region, up through the Bering Straits, and into Asia. And that area is going to be developed on the basis of a thermonuclear fusion driver. It will probably take up to 50 years to get this thing organized. Maybe we'll be lucky and get it in less. But this is the only secure basis for the future of humanity, because we have to, on the other hand, we have to defend Earth against these obstacles, these asteroids. And one big asteroid hitting Earth can just knock out the entire human population. We have no defense against that. And that's an example of the reality we face. You have all these people with their opinions. My opinion, his opinion, her opinion, the child's opinion, the monkey's opinion. It doesn't work. If you're going to deal with the universe, and that's what we're dealing with, this is not some little park that you're living in called Earth. This is a part of the solar system, and the solar system is a pygmy, and it's stupid. The solar system is going to sleep on us now. And the world is going to get cold and colder. We've had cold periods of that type before, when the sun decided to take a long-term nap, which it's doing now. And the best indications are just exactly that. So we're going to need that. We're also, do you know what it takes to deal with an asteroid which is determined to kill you all off? Do you know what the means is, the organization that's required? So therefore, the very existence of man depends on changing their stupid attitudes and to realizing that mankind has been achieved because we have the gift of creativity, which no other species has. And it's by using our creativity, which leads us to higher orders of capability, that mankind can survive and achieve and find a useful place for it in the whole system. I'm always going to live on Mars. But we can put devices and create them from Earth and put them on Mars, and we can do all kinds of things up there, including help to run up a system to defend Earth and Mars, for example, from these asteroids that are dangerous. And nothing's being done about it. Yes, some people are tinkering with this thing and talking about it, thinking about experiments, but they're not getting ready to do the job. And what mankind needs is a complete change from attitude on this account. Yes, we are going to have nations and national cultures. We're going to defend them. We're going to maintain them and promote them. But we're not going to kill each other. because that's just plain stupid. And what you've got is, the problem you've got is empires. You've got the imperial system. And for a long time, we don't even know too clearly how this worked out. But what a division occurred between two kinds of human beings, oligarchs and slaves. And you were mostly slaves in that category. And what the oligarchs' chance was say, well, mankind, if mankind have a large population, then mankind will take over away from the oligarchy. Therefore, we must periodically kill off mankind in general in order to protect ourselves in behalf of the oligarchy. That's what the Queen is doing. The whole rumpus now is based on the Queen's policy of reducing the human population to 1 billion or less from its present level of 7 billion. That's what this whole confusion is. And therefore, what you've got to do is you've got to get rid of the oligarchy, including what the Queen of England represents. You've got to get rid of it, because this is what's controlling the planet. And if we just sit and try to do what we do as we do now, mankind won't survive. If you want mankind to survive, you've got to accept the preconditions of development which are necessary to permit the possibility of man's survival. Under those conditions, mankind can do very well. Well, right now we've got the problem. We've got the western areas of the United States and northern Mexico and so forth are hopeless right now. The United States is dying physically because of Wall Street and the Queen of England. These are the forces that are destroying the ability of human beings to live as a species. And therefore we need projects which do a multiple number of things that we need done. We need to protect man now as a species. We need to free man from the slavery that Wall Street merely typifies. Shut down Wall Street. It doesn't earn anything. It's not good for anything. If it does anything good, it's an accident. We need bigger accidents of that kind. And take them out. We need the end of the oligarchical system. And if we don't get that, then the very weapons which we could use to save mankind would be used by mankind against itself. So the time has come, no bones about it. Anybody who's got a different opinion, contrary to what I just said, is an idiot.